Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. This is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist. I'm also the parent of a couple of ADHD kids who are now adults. And I have been coaching and diagnosing ADHD for a lot of decades anyway. And today I want to talk about one of the tendencies, and it's become increasingly popular, is to let your kids quit. Okay, and with an ADHD child, that is particularly a bad thing to be encouraging. Your child is working in a world that is not designed for his kind of brain. I mean, there are certain positions that that brain is perfectly acceptable, and it's part of your job raising them to try to figure out how to find that happy medium of where their creativity and energy and stuff can be used to good purpose, but it doesn't get in their way of having a reasonably satisfying life. And so a lot of times it's just, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. And you've got to be very careful. I mean, clearly there are some situations where it's okay to let them stop doing something, but it can't become a habit. It can't become a pattern. It can't become something they do all the time, because they will have to learn to adapt. Okay. There is nobody, I think, who can do just anything they want, anytime they want. I mean, I'm not even sure that would be good for anybody. Part of having a successful life is having a certain amount of self-discipline and the way to, wanting the ability to see a goal, set up a plan and follow the plan to get to the goal. That's important. People who quit a lot don't do that. They wait till it gets uncomfortable or difficult and then they stop. And you don't want to encourage that with your child. I mean, we usually say in the business of psychology anyway, that ADHDers can do anything they want if they like it. It's the stuff they don't like that they have a horrible time convincing themselves to do. But I could say that for myself and most other people I know, that I don't want to do any of that. But we have had to adapt and adjust and start doing some of those things. But we've had to figure out how our brains work and how we can use what we're good at to get what we're not so good at. And I think this, no, not spare the rod. I've got somebody commenting here, and no, it's definitely not spare the rod and spoil the child. That is not even close to what we're talking about. We're talking about signing up for soccer and going to 2 practices and saying, "Oh, I don't do this anymore. It's too hard. He makes us run." Those kinds of things. That's different. This is it's a difficult balance. Okay. I'm not going to say this is easy, but you can't just let them quit anytime they want to quit. That goes in a category of they won't think anything's worth the effort. It's like they don't think anything's worth the effort if everybody gets a participation trophy. I'm sorry. I've got no patience with that. And, it's not that it's bad. I mean, the tricky thing with an ADHD child is you have to be constantly worried about their self-esteem, building up their sense of self as self-worth and all that sort of thing, because it's very easy for them to get down on themselves. Depression is rampant in ADHD land, and that's one of the things that you have to as a parent, you have to be very careful about encouragement. Find the good stuff that they're doing. Don't find the common, the thing. Don't be always criticizing. I've talked about the thing called the Lasota principle for years and years now, but basically, it's the idea that everybody needs at least a 4-to-1 ratio of positive comments to criticisms. 4-to-1, 5-to-1, somewhere in there. ADHDers probably need more than that because they get way more criticisms and not the illusion of choice, certainly, but uh, they have choices. But once they make a decision, they have to live up to it. Is more the point. Uh, like I said, if they sign up for a soccer team and they go to 3 practices and say, "This is too hard. I don't do this." Well, I had one of my children like that, and "Oh, no, we're going to finish that. You're going to do that. You signed up for it. You made a commitment. Made a commitment to the coach. You made a commitment to the team. So you got to keep on to this season. If at the end of the season you don't want to come back, that's fine." Well, one of one of my sons did that. Was, "Oh, it's too much running." Well, then he played. He decided he liked it after all, and he ended up playing 4 years of uh, college soccer at the goalie position, and all 4 years he was a starter on his teams. So now he loves soccer. Now as his son, my grandson, became a pretty darn good soccer goalie. Uh, he also became a place kicker, which I didn't expect. But anyway, it's just the idea of they don't want to get in the habit of giving up, of just, "Oh, it's too hard. I can't do it." That, we're talking about resilience, or I talk about resilience a lot because that's what you want. You want a kid who can, you know, have something that didn't work out the way he or she wanted to and recover and say, "Oh, wait a minute. This didn't, I could have done this better. I could have made this do, that you do the problem solving improvement, the kind of thing. And you get better and better. And then that's resilience. And then, that's how you develop a feeling that you can be successful, that you can do stuff. And that's what you're really wanting. Anybody can quit. Okay. But you want to make sure that that's not the main way your child handles difficult situations. I mean, I've seen ADHDers. I had one patient who he had ADHD, he had dyslexia, and he wanted to be a lawyer. So we had to do all kinds of testing so he could get accommodations on the LSAT, the legal standardized test that everybody has to take to go to law school. I mean, and I was thinking, if I was going to pick out a job, a position for you, it definitely wouldn't be this. He said, I know, but I really want to. My whole family's been lawyers, and I really want to be a lawyer too. And now he's quite a successful lawyer, and he made it through law school. He made it into law school first of all, and then he is running a successful practice now. So even though that wasn't in his ballpark, you would have looked at that. Oh, yeah, boy. Even though it didn't match his strengths, and it certainly didn't match. It would call out his weaknesses, so he would have to learn to compensate for that. And the same thing with any child, but especially an ADHD child who has such a much rougher time. You've got to give them a ornery attitude, if you will. And not from my kids, I know ornery is not a problem, but that it is a productive orneriness that leads them to say, I'm not going to just give up on this. We're going to work this out. And and even academically, um, yeah, they will have an easier time with some things than others. In my family, it's art and music. If they can do that, then the world is good. You may not make much money, but the world is good. Anyway, the thing you want with your child is that they know that, okay, I've got an attitude up here in my brain. It's not because of anything that ADHD has made my brain different, but it's because I can still learn how to adapt and adjust. I can still learn some ways of making my brain think it's okay to do this. Because you're gonna have to do that. You want to graduate from high school even. You're gonna have to take some courses you don't really want to take, that you detest, that da 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 da. And you can't just gonna do it. That's not gonna work out very well. So you have to have an attitude that, okay, this is just a problem. I can solve this. I can do this. Um, I can do this. I can figure out a way to think about this thing that'll make me think it's worth doing. It's like, I used to tell my teenage ADHDers, "Well, take all this geometry and calculus and all. I mean, not calculus, algebra. Well, no, no, no." I said, "I'll never use that. It's not practical." I say, "Well, tell you what, you go watch This Old House on public television, and you watch the carpenter, and you watch him when he's putting on a roof or something like that, and see how much math he uses. I mean, Tom Silva is the guy's name, and he just uses math like crazy to, do this, and he's got all these shortcuts he's worked out, and uh, he can do wonders with a square, and, cutting angles and all that kind of stuff. And that a lot of times was just, oh, huh. You mean there's something I could use this for? I mean, I will freely admit that math is a extremely poorly taught subject. Uh, and I'm not sure that anything. One of the things that worries me about education is we just teach memorization. Basically, we're not teaching thinking, and that's what you have to do, because your kid is a little different, and needs that a little bit more. I mean, if he sees the reason, or she sees the reason for doing something, they're a lot more likely to actually follow through with it. But they're even better if it's following through, if they're the ones who thought of, why should I be doing this? What's important about this? Why are they, what is, and what makes, I mean, we all play tricks with our brains, and anybody who's made it to adulthood has learned how to not go with their first impulse in a lot of situations, and how to change it so that I like something else better, or I can convince myself that it's important to do this. You know, I remember having, I'm reading the same chapter in our math book of some kind. I can't remember what it was. I was reading it over and over. I couldn't just, what the heck? I don't know what I'm going to do this crap. I'll just give up on it. But no, it is a matter of figuring out how you can look at a situation, and your taking action is desirable. And that sounds very abstract, but concretely, it can be as simple as uh, whatever motivates you. It's like, well, if I don't do this, then I'll have to repeat it next year, and that'll be a pain. And I don't, so I'm not going to do that. I won't do it. I will bust through this, and then you find out, hey, this is kind of fun. Math was never, actually, math was never really a problem with me, but it was, I never exactly knew why I was studying it. It's like, what is, like, I've got 2 years of calculus. I have no idea what the heck calculus is even for. But so you want to try you're working. This is just another chapter in the large area of resilience. You've got to teach resilience. You've got to teach that this is a problem, you can solve it. This is uncomfortable, you can figure a way through it. You you had a lot of mistakes this time, you can make it better the next time, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's another thing you have to work with. Shame is frequent with ADHD kids. I say over and over again, they get 70 critical comments every day from teachers, parents, da da da. They're prone to feel ashamed of having ADHD, and frankly, a lot of parents, but my generation definitely, we were ashamed. Oh, what's the matter with your kid? Why is he making so much noise? And we didn't know about ADHD. Well, in my case, ADHD hadn't even been labeled yet. And we were ashamed. We were, "Oh, what's the matter? Why doesn't your kid behave like a normal kid? Why doesn't he behave properly? Why is he having a piffy fit right out there in the middle of the store aisle?" That sort of thing. And that can't be. Okay. And there's nothing to be ashamed of with ADHD. It's not a behavior problem. It's a neurologic condition. I keep saying that every week. It's a neurologic condition. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Do the best you can. And in spite of all your worries, it'll probably work out. And the other important thing with along the line of making them resilient and making them feel like they can do stuff is to find their strengths. Okay. A lot of times it's something artistic. I am familiar with a whole bunch of ADHDers that are very right hemisphere. That's the visual spatial side of the brain. They're very right hemisphere oriented, where the school system is left linear logical, over here. And, this is the problem, write it down. I'll tell you about it. You'll process the language I say, and da 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 da. Well, ADHDers typically have a different way of processing things, and they switch from they're hearing it, but then they're making pictures in their head. They're seeing what it would look like, which makes it easy for them to study history. But it's just a slightly different way of processing information. Nothing is just directly linear logical. It takes just a little bit extra to go into the right hemisphere and make the movie or make the picture of the situation or of what they're trying to teach. So that's a whole lot of interesting stuff about the brain, because your kiddo is different. Many of them are extremely high IQ. My hyperactive ADHDer had the highest IQ of my kids. And I'm a psychologist, so I tested them all just for practice. but my kids are all well above average intelligence, but he was by far the brightest, and he still is. He's gone a different educational route. I never would have picked out gemnology and becoming a jewelry designer and all that stuff. That not my family. My dad's a golf pro. My grandfather was a farmer. We don't have any artsy people, but he definitely is, and he was, and he always has been. And so you've got to find their strengths, emphasize those, get them extra help, training, coaching, whatever they need to get that talent, skill enhanced. And that helps with self-image. That also helps with resilience. It's all kind of tied together. You've got to, and you're always, being an ADHD parent is not easy. It's a lot more. Well, there's a lot more decisions and a lot more judgment needed than in just raising a neurotypical kid, and your job is to get them so that they think of themselves as having the potential to be successful in something. It doesn't necessarily have to be, the same thing that dad was successful in, or grandpa, or any of that. It can be, they can chart their own path, but they've got to believe in themselves. And quitters don't believe in themselves. Quitters are looking for the easy way out. They want to be comfortable more than they want to get anything done. And if you want your kiddo to be a performer, a high performer, you've got to have some uh, ability to tolerate the pain and discomfort of becoming successful. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. This has been Dr. G's ADHD chat, and my website is terrygingrassphd.com, and I have a couple of signups there. If you want to get on my list for my newsletter, you want to get on my uh, schedule for a intake, kind of a freebie intake interview, just to see if we might work together well for coaching. And we will catch you next time. And remember, we're trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. We'll see you next time.